Welcome to Worlds Unbound. Make sure to visit the story page on Royal Road to support the author, or to follow along. Link in the description. Video created with permission from author. That time an American was reincarnated into another world. By Sp4de. Synopsis. It's not always the Asians who get isekaied. Very rarely does an American get isekaied, though the isekai gods have reasons for that. It's time for John to remind them of those reasons. End of synopsis. Chapter 1 Killer Truck. John Cooper was playing his favorite game. Kicked back on an old leather chair while surrounded by his posters and football gear, his eyes flashed with the scenes of war that played out on the screen before him. Blood flew as miniguns and rockets drew explosions, lighting up his vision. Good old-fashioned American violence is what his father called things like this. Not that it meant anything to John. It was just a game he liked. Given a few months, he might move on to another. It happened one day when he was on the road. Driving through a city, John spotted, as usual, a large semi-truck hauling some cargo. While drive up to a red light, he pondered. I've seen some of those European and Japanese trucks. Why are they so puny compared to ours? Although, considering Texas is damn near the size of Europe, I can see why. Bigger places begets bigger trucks. He hummed with sound logic, but then, as he watched the truck barrel down the road, he felt something was off. It was going way too fast. Shit, is that thing gonna stop? He panicked, and then, he saw the truck barrel through 5 cars in front of it, throwing them out of the way. Oh shit! It's not gonna stop! He cursed as he watched the truck turn in his direction. He could hear the roar of its engine, and it was going way too fast to evade. He prayed it would swerve out of the way, as a head-on collision would kill not just him, but several others instantly. And then it happened. The truck transformed into a robot, jumping on its feet and roaring in his face. It's isekai time, motherfucker! John watched as the semi-truck robot jumped high into the air and came falling down with a diving elbow drop, as if it were some kind of pro wrestler. He sat there baffled. What the fuck? Boom. And everything went dark. End of chapter. Chapter 2 Killer Truck. Gah! I couldn't help the scream as I jumped from the floor. My breathing was rough as I looked around, and I found my new surroundings to be both unpleasant and soothing. Hills of grasslands spread as far as my eye could see. It was a bright sunny day with a cool breeze that served to calm me down. But I still didn't know where I was. Combined with the shocking experience with that robot truck, I wasn't exactly in the right frame of mind. I slowly stood, assessing my condition, which was perfectly fine. In fact, I felt great, as if I had been rejuvenated. I gradually calmed down. But then, I suddenly felt my hands start burning. Ack! Damn! I clutched my wrist and saw what was happening. It was like a tattoo was being seared onto the back of my right hand. I saw a ring of 13 stars appear. Huh! These stars, they're kind of like the Betsy Ross flag. I guess it's not the worst tattoo to get, but damn did that hurt. I rubbed the ring of stars. The pain had luckily faded. It just felt tender now. But this still doesn't help me. Where the hell am I? I was worried as I saw nothing but grasslands. I didn't know where I was or how the hell I got here. After a while, though, I just started walking. I walked for close to 2 hours in a single direction, seeing nothing but grasslands and the occasional patch of trees. After getting over a hill, though, I suddenly saw signs of civilization. Village! I jumped when I saw the structures in the distance. There was also farmland, and I could see people moving around. But it was a village, which is what worried me. Where on earth did villages still exist? I guess if it's Ohio or something where all of 3.5 people live. But how did I get to Ohio? I mumbled while walking toward the village. But as I got closer, I noticed more and more oddities. For instance, the rough stone houses, the medieval clothing of the residents, the water well in the center of the village that was actually being used. Amish? I smiled weirdly, walking into the bounds of the village. I naturally caught several eyes, many people keeping their distance. I was like some kind of exotic animal that they were all wary of. And at least they weren't speaking Spanish or something. I could understand them fine, though their accents were different. Hey, you! I reached out and tapped a man's shoulder who was passing by with hurried steps. He jumped and turned around, looking at me with caution. I rolled my eyes, thinking he was just a condescending ass. Can you tell me where this is? Like what state and city? I must go. He had a strained smile as he dodged my question and walked away. Dude, seriously? I thought the Amish were nice. Whatever. I sighed before walking further in. And after catching enough attention, I was finally approached by a tall man with a full beard. He seemed like a man of authority, so I smiled in relief. Hello, sir. Greetings, traveler. What brings you to this humble village? Yeah, I'm lost. I scratched my head. Can you tell me what state we're in? State? Yeah, or city? I'm sorry, but the nearest city isn't for a few dozen miles. To the north you'll find the city of Halesburg. Halesburg? Where am I, in Europe? Never mind, do you have a phone that I can use? I lost mine. A phone? He looked at me with a dumb face, and suddenly I was a bit more skeptical about my situation. I narrowed my eyes. Hey, what year is it? I believe the calendar year is 622, Sir Traveler. 622. Shit. I remembered the words of that insane robot truck. Did I seriously? Damn it. What the hell is this? Fucking. Hey, what the hell is this anyway? I suddenly brought up the back of my right hand and pushed it to the guy's face. After being flustered, he concentrated and saw the 13-star ring. Then, his eyes bulged. Oh, esteemed Magus! Forgive my rudeness! The hell? I was baffled as the man fell to his knees, the others with him following suit. What are you doing? I'm terribly sorry for not realizing sooner, great Magus. What the hell is a Magus? I'm sorry? He raised his head, seeing my irked face. I'm asking what the hell a Magus is. A Magus is one who had been blessed by the Holy Ghost. That crest is the sign of your blessing, and it grants you special power. Oh? What special power? I don't know, great Magus. All I know is there are 3 types of magi. The warlocks, the summoners, and the knights. Which one your crest makes you, I can't know. Is that right? So I've been brought to a primitive magical fairyland. Fantastic. I sighed while wrapping my head around my situation. I was seriously murdered by a robot semi-truck and dropped into this world. A place where I had no friends, no family, not so much as an acquaintance besides this man who was probably the village chief. I was all alone, with nobody to rely on, in a new place that I hadn't the slightest clue about how it worked. The only thing that gave me any reassurance was this crest on my hand. The reality hit me, and for a long moment, I processed it all. And then I closed my eyes. Fuck it. It is what it is. Hey, village chief. Yes? The man rose to his feet cautiously. I spoke with a deadpan face. How do I get to the city? It was 3 days later that I realized I may have misspoken. When I had said city, I meant the nearest city. But apparently the village chief thought I meant the damn capital city at the center of whatever kingdom we were in. Well, at least travel was fast. Besides the crest, it was the village chief who introduced me to the first fantastical thing that confirmed this wasn't Earth. Our rides to the city were on giant birds with saddles on their backs. These things had a wingspan of at least 20 meters, and they were more than capable of flying with cargo. With only some essentials, the village chief and I each jumped on a bird and took off. And I must say, that was the second scariest thing that's happened to me besides the freak robot truck murder. To soar in the sky 3,000 feet above the ground was thrilling. Even after 3 days of travel, I didn't get bored of the sights of landscapes that we passed over. And then, we arrived at the city. And it was something else. I thought it was going to be a run-down stone forest with dull gray colors and primitive living conditions. But it seemed this magic shit was more prevalent than I thought. There was a single giant tower that stood in the center of the city, a tower that rose hundreds of meters in the air with flying mounts like birds and carriages landing on pads across its body. It was a magic tower no matter how I looked at it, with a body of night blue stone and a top of sparkling crystal. And next to it was a grand palace formed of marble and gold, no doubt where the king and queen of the kingdom lived. It was called the Kingdom of Dragon's Tongue, and according to the village chief, it was the best magic kingdom in the world. Of course, living in a village constrained his worldview, so I wasn't sure how valid that statement was. Still, anything was new to me, so I didn't care. If anything, I was enraptured by the mystical sights and atmosphere of the city. We landed on the outskirts of the city where the wall was, touching down outside the gate where hundreds of people constantly came and went. I let the chief approach the guards who manned an outpost, and he talked for me. "Good sirs, I come with a guest who doesn't have citizenship. He would like to apply." As I had told the chief about how I was a foreigner with no background, he knew what to help me with. "Temporary visas are 50 coin, and you must head to customs in order to apply for citizenship. Here." The chief paid the 50 coin, and he was easily handed a card, which he passed to me. After that, we entered the city. I glanced at the man who led me. "I'll pay you back once I get my hands on some money." "Oh, no worries at all, John." He waved. Honestly, the only reason I was letting him do anything for me was because I had nothing to my name, and no direction to go. I was in a desperate situation, so I could only leech off this man. But I wasn't going to let this go without reimbursement. His goodwill would be repaid someday. "So you said I should enter the magisterium?" "Yes. There you'll be able to find a path in life, one that hinges on your crest. It's the most prestigious institution in the kingdom that accepts just about every magus, at least for the first year." I had been briefed on this magisterium, which was basically a magic college. It was a place that taught magic to all 3 types of magi. It taught the warlocks how to spellcast, the summoners how to summon, and the knights how to fight. But of course, it did all this for a reason. And that was to fight the existential threat of the world. They were called the Scourge, a non-human race of humanoids and beasts that sought nothing but the destruction of humanity. Humanity had been at war with them for hundreds of years, but year after year, the battles only got worse, and the contenders only got stronger. The Kingdom of Dragon's Tongue was one of 2 kingdoms that fought the Scourge. The other kingdom was one that the chief knew nothing about. So, with the ever-present threat on their doorstep, the magisterium was the world's leader in churning out powerful magi for the cause. And it would be my first step forward in this crazy world. "You won't be able to join immediately, though. There are about 5 months before the new year starts and entries are accepted." "Huh! So what do I do for 5 months?" "Well..." The chief looked around as we walked through the city. Plenty of shops, and bills didn't pay themselves. I sighed. "I guess I'd better find a job." "Don't worry, there's always work to find in this place. I'll stay with you for a few days until you find one, and then I'll need to head back to my village." "Thank you, Chief." "Hey, kid!" My head spun to the right at the sudden shout, my eyes landing on a man who seemed to run one of the shops. He leaned on the doorway as he eyed me, his mouth chewing on a small toothpick. "You looking for work?" "Depends." I crossed my arms, prompting him to lay out the offer. "I'm a delivery man, and I need more runners. You get paid by the job, and the schedule isn't uptight like other jobs. I'll even give you a starting bonus, since you seem to be new here." "Huh. What do you think, Chief? I glanced at the chief, who was rubbing his beard. Then he shrugged. It's up to you, John. It's either that or working in a bakery or a store as a counter clerk. I guess I'll take this then. All right, guy, I accept. I walked over, and as shaking hands seemed to be the symbol it was on earth, I shook the stranger's hand. He smiled. The name's Plex. John. Come inside, John. I'll show you what we do here. All right. I nodded, but before leaving, I turned back to the chief. I don't think you need to wait for me, Chief. I might as well stick around for a day or so. The capital is fun to visit. John, if you need anything, find me at the Moonlight Inn. Right. Thanks, Chief. You've helped me more than you know. It was nothing, John. Now go on. You know where to find me. He waved me off, so I went with Plex into the shop. Thus began my first job in this new world. End of chapter. Chapter 3, Drug Runner. Plex walked me into what seemed like a small warehouse. The only issue I had with it though was how the entire building gave off a bad vibe. My intuition was something I trusted, not that it was the ultimate tool of prophecy. But it had kept me out of bad situations and away from psycho girls in the past, so I learned to run with it. This job is rather simple. We receive delivery orders on that wall right there, and you can choose the jobs you take. When you take a job, you're required to grab a package from the client and deliver it to the recipient. You're also required to collect money, or whatever form of payment designated by the job, from the recipient, delivering that money back to the client. And we obviously earn a portion of that money. Yeah, those words only added to the bad vibe I got from this whole place. Was this drug running? Well, only if the products were drugs. Any questions? What if the customer doesn't want to pay? I asked that question knowing what kind of answer I was gonna get. Plex smiled. Well, those customers only need a bit of persuasion, that's all. They all cough it up at the end of the day. I won't toss you into the wild to fend for yourself though. You'll shadow me on the first few, just to get an idea. Fuck it, why not? Might as well try something new. Haha, that's the spirit. But first, he looked me up and down. Let's get you a new set of clothes. I don't know where you came from, but those clothes aren't very normal. Heh. I chuckled and looked down. I had been wearing a t-shirt and sweats when I died, clothing that definitely didn't exist here. And although the colors were only white and gray, they still stood out. I needed to fit in with this place, so I accepted Plex's offer and went to a nearby shop. It seemed like suit-like attire was common in this world. At least, in the cities of this world. Standard dress was pants, long sleeves, a vest, and some hard leather shoes. Thankfully this world's fashion industry was developed, so I wasn't uncomfortable in anything. And I looked decent. I definitely blended with the rest of the populace now. The only thing I wasn't so accustomed to was the pair of gloves that Plex insisted I wore. They were fingerless leather gloves, and they were apparently meant to cover my crest. Since I understood that my crest might not necessarily be something to show off easily, I agreed and made the gloves a part of my regular clothing. Besides that, I kept my old clothes with me. They were the only memento of Earth that I had now. And after our shopping trip, Plex went and pulled a job off the wall for us. The most challenging thing for you will be learning the layout of the city. You have to know where to go if you want to deliver things. And these jobs need to be completed in a timely manner. We don't like to keep our clients waiting, especially if it's a rush order. Alright. So how should I go about learning? Simple. Through experience. Don't worry, you'll pick everything up over time, so long as you stick with the job. Well, I only have 5 months before I plan to enter the magisterium. So until then, I'll do my best. Sketchy or not, I had seen what the various jobs on the wall paid, and it seemed like good money. I could earn hundreds of coin per job, and I could complete quite a number in a single day. Of course, if things really did get dangerous, then I planned to leave. I wasn't gonna get caught up in some underground war after getting on the bad side of a mob boss. And I had a feeling such a thing was very possible. Alright, go ahead and grab the package. We'll start our first job now. Plex handed me the job paper, and I looked at the package identifier on it. In another part of the warehouse was a series of shelves, each one with various boxes and containers. Some were medium-sized, and others were small enough to be held in a hand. I found the box I needed, a medium-sized wooden crate that needed both arms to carry. After I grabbed it, we both left the warehouse and made our way down the streets. As we walked, I observed my surroundings. Most of the buildings were at least 3 stories tall. The streets were wide, the alleys narrow and dark, and as it was getting to be evening, light posts started glowing with radiance. For a while the walk was dull. Just another boring street, some residential, others commercial with restaurants or bakeries. It was nothing I hadn't seen before. But then, Plex led me into a large plaza. And the whole place lit up. Fairy dust here! 2 ivory horns for 300 coin! Handcrafted silver blades made by the Golden Warlock! 10 hours smoked yak meat, get it fast! It was a plaza full of booths and shops with open walls, with over 1,000 people either hawking their wares or haggling down prices. Floating lights lit up the surroundings as if they were alive, and I could see all the exotic items that were being traded. From grand sets of armor to small animals for pets, it seemed like you could find anything you wanted here. Welcome to the Golden Trading Post. Hundreds of merchants fight to come here and sell their wares, and thousands of people drop many millions of coin here on the weekly. Only when the sun falls does this place come alive. But of course, the only people who come here are chumps who spend their money on overpriced garbage. Plex snickered, and then he brought me to a shop. It seemed just as busy as all the others, selling all kinds of savory food that made my mouth water. But we didn't come here for food. Instead, upon entering, the shopkeep saw Plex and beamed with a wide smile. Plex! I haven't seen you in a while. I thought you had quit the business. Ha, like that'll ever happen. I was just looking for an apprentice to help me, and I found John here. He patted my shoulder, and the shopkeep looked me over. Back on Earth, I played college sports and was in the prime of my life. At 22 years old I was over 6 feet tall and proudly chiseled with large muscles. Even Plex was only taller than me. In fact, everyone in this world seemed to have an average height of 6 foot, so I didn't stand out much in that arena. But I was still built like a wall, and the shopkeep nodded with approval. He looks strong. And he's a magus, huh? He looked me over, his words confusing me since I had my crest covered by my gloves. How did he know I was a magus? Plex only nodded. That he is, but not a certified one. He'll be joining the magisterium this upcoming year. I see. Well, John, so long as you're not stupid and know when to respect the right people, you'll keep your head. Don't make yourself an enemy, and you'll remain immune. And who knows, maybe someone will take a liking to you and you'll get to make a connection. Magi always need friends, and not just in high places. He slapped my shoulder with a toothy grin before waving the two of us to the back of the shop. Head on in. And the next time you come through, just give my name. I'm Chef Black. Thank you, Chef. I gave the guy a smile and nod, and weaving through the store, we came upon a hidden door that led into a dark tunnel. If I still had any doubt in my mind, I didn't anymore. Walking through the dry dark tunnel made of paved stone, we came upon another door. Plex knocked once, and a hatch opened revealing a pair of eyes. Gavin. Oh, it's Plex. Who's the new guy? The pair of eyes widened before looking at me. A new recruit. I'm teaching him the ropes. Fun. He hummed before closing the hatch and opening the door. Gavin, a heavy-set man who was taller than even Plex, welcomed us in. Have a safe trip. Always. Plex smiled as he led me in. I couldn't help a wry smile. Music, lights, hot women, and men with a ring on each finger. The festive yet moody atmosphere, along with the thick scent of heavy alcohol, told me all I needed to know about this place. Where there's light, there's darkness. Welcome to the black market. Where there's no rules except the ones you make. Plex laughed and brought me along. As I walked, I saw three things. First, a fight that broke out between two men with broadswords. In only 3 seconds the fight was decided as one man had his right arm taken off. Second, a store full of caged beasts that were as massive as they were ferocious. Apparently they could be bought as companions. And third, a brothel with nude women at the doorway and heavy smoke that wafted out, creating a flowing fog at their feet. As the freest market in the city, there's nothing you can't find here. They have everything from slaves to the hardest drugs. They also have the best and most powerful gear a magus can buy. You'll do good to remember that in the future. The kingdom allows all this? I was quite shocked by it all. Sure, I knew that these places existed, but on Earth, it all existed online, or behind closed doors that nobody knew existed. But here, it was basically out in the open. I could see the night sky above. We seemed to be within an area that was enclosed by the backs of buildings around it. Plex laughed. Allow it? Sure, on paper they abhor this kind of stuff. But there's 2 reasons that nobody touches the black market. 1, because every powerful magus has a hand in this dark place. And 2, his voice fell. Because the last person to try and destroy this place was murdered in his sleep. You don't fuck with the black market. Yeah. I sighed. This new job of mine was turning out to be interesting. We're here. After walking through many alleyways, we finally approached our destination. Since the box you're carrying is a light package, it was dropped at our delivery center. These jobs are easier since you just need to take them straight to the recipient instead of grabbing the package from the client. Still, we'll need to collect the money, and those who receive light packages that aren't worth much tend to enjoy giving us a hard time. Let's see if this one is one of those people. Plex smiled before knocking on the door to a dark building. Who is it? The door opened, revealing a really skinny girl who looked malnourished. Smoke also bellowed out of the doorway, giving off an incredibly strong odor that made me frown. We have a delivery. For Mr. Halley. Oh. Hey, Halley! The moonshine is here! Finally! The girl yelled, prompting another man to come to the door. I spotted a long pipe in his mouth for smoking, and whatever plant he put into it glowed a silvery white when it was burned. It resembled the radiance of the moon, causing me to narrow my eyes at the box in my hands. I'm a drug runner now. Go ahead and put the box inside. The man waved, but I didn't move anywhere. Plex smiled. I'll need to see the money, if you don't mind. HM? I'll get it, just put the box inside. Plex was silent, simply standing there with a small smile on his face. It caused the man's face to fall. He snarled and drew a knife, but Plex was right there with him, a short sword appearing in his hand. Let's not make this difficult, friend. Otherwise I'll take more than just your money. Tisk, ass-licking piece of... The man's voice faded as he headed inside. When he came back, he threw a sack at Plex's face. When he caught it, I finally handed off the box. Pleasure doing business. Just get the fuck off my doorstep. Slam. I recoiled a bit at the door in my face. Plex chuckled as we walked away. Most of the lightweights are like that. But so long as you don't give them any room, they'll back off. And if they really want to fight, you just have to make sure you win. Then you can take a little bonus along with the payment. I have 2 questions. Ask away. Plex counted money as I asked. First, what are lightweights and light packages? What you just delivered was a large batch of moonshine, which is a common drug the guy was smoking. Light packages are packages that contain common or low-value goods, and lightweights are the people who deal in those goods. On the contrary, it's the heavyweights you want to be careful with. Dealing with those people is just as rewarding as it is risky. Valuable cargo, high payment, but those people are similarly dangerous. I'll take you on a heavyweight tomorrow. Okay. I got the concept, and at the same time was now looking forward to tomorrow. Now second. If that guy insisted on fighting, why would you only take a little bonus instead of everything he's good for? Haha, quite the ruthless question. And I get it, but there's a special reason we don't ruin these little runts. Plex nodded as he finished counting the money, stuffing the sack into his coat. It's wise to never take more than you're worth. Not only does it ruin our reputation, but it can invite trouble. It's a principle of mercy that I've always employed, and it's led to more business and fewer enemies. Besides, I don't care about whatever small stash of money that deadbeat was hiding. As delivery men, we're above that. This trade of ours is a special one, so act like it. He smacked my chest, causing me to smile. After that, we delivered the money to a drug dealer who let us take our fee directly. He didn't even bother to check. It would have been easy to sneak away with a few extra coin, but as Plex said, we're above that. And what was a few extra bucks, when we could continue to receive this man's business? It seemed like common knowledge, but Plex told me that I'd be surprised by the amount of idiots who ruin everything for a bit of extra cash. Clink. I jumped when Plex tossed a sack of coin at my chest. Your payment for the job. This is the entire fee. I looked inside. The fee was close to 200 coin, and all of it was in the sack. It's fine. Consider it a starting bonus. I was silent as I glanced at the man. He was being good to me. He got me clothes, a job that could pay well, and was giving me this bonus. But as I had discovered, anybody doing this kind of business wasn't someone to easily trust. You couldn't trust even the strangers walking past you. Maybe they were out to steal the sack of coin in your pocket. So after I sobered myself, washing out all the thoughts of how fantastical all these experiences were, I brought forward my skepticism. Plex noticed as I stopped walking, turning around and looking at me with a raised brow. Something wrong? You take the coin. I tossed the sack back at him. I don't need to be in your debt. Put that toward the bill for my clothes. Oh? Ha! He started laughing, taking a few seconds to calm down. Getting skeptical, are we? I will admit, you shouldn't trust anybody in the black market. But unfortunately, you're already in my debt, and 200 coin isn't going to change that much. At least have enough to get a room and feed yourself. He threw the sack back at me. And hey, he continued before I could. You don't have to trust me, John. You're a magus, right? Figure out what power you have, and then you can keep yourself safe from any schemes I might be planning. Your own ability is what determines everything else. And besides, I couldn't care less about 200 coin. Now come on, I want to get one more job done before the day ends. Seeing him walk off, I sighed. And I followed, deciding that I would work on whatever my magic was when I got the chance. End of chapter. Chapter 4, Fireballs. After another job, I learned that I would be working in the night as a delivery man. The black market operated at all hours of the day, but only at night did the true doors of darkness open. Basically, we delivery men weren't supposed to operate during the day. The daytime was when we received orders, and when night came, we fulfilled them. So my sleep schedule needed to be flipped, which wasn't too difficult of a change. When the second job of my first night was completed, I went to a hotel that Plex recommended me. I paid for 3 days, which cost 30 coin, and fell asleep as soon as I hit the crappy bed. Since I finished the second job only an hour before the sun came up, I didn't wake up until well beyond noon. I didn't have a clock, but jobs couldn't start until sunset, which was in another few hours. So in my room, I decided to take a quick look at my crest. After the tattoo was formed on my hand, I hadn't felt anything from it since. 13 stars sitting on my hand and looking pretty. No amount of feeling or meditation activated it. There wasn't some mystical energy that I could feel and control. There was nothing. Right now, it really was just a tattoo. That magisterium probably knows how to activate it. But that's 5 months away. I'll just need to keep trying and see if anything happens. There's no way this is here for nothing. I refused to believe that I was unable to use my crest, so in that case, I just needed time to experiment. The hotel I stayed at had a restaurant, so after getting food to eat I headed back out to the warehouse. When I arrived, the sun was beginning to set. And inside the warehouse, I found not only Plex, but another man. "Ah, John! You're early." "Yeah. This is Libitus. He's one of our few co-workers." "Hello?" Libitus waved, and I nodded to him. When I approached, Plex smacked my shoulder. "Good news, I just got an order from a heavyweight, one of our premium clients. It'll be our first run of the day. After that, I'll come with you on a few more lightweights, see if you can handle things on your own. I'm fine with delivering, but my biggest issue is still directions. I don't know where anything is." I voiced my most obvious concern. I couldn't learn the layout of the black market or the city in only 2 days. Plex smiled. "That's actually why I called Libitus here. He has a map detailing all the information you need to know. Here." The man walked over to a table. I looked over his shoulder as he unfurled a map. It turns out the black market was bigger than I thought. There were actually 2 of such markets that spanned several blocks. And those 2 markets had very specific entry and exit points. The food shop Plex took me through was one such entry point, and in that market, there were only 4 entrances. Libitus explained. "There are 2 markets. The one you went to last night is the Founders' Black Market. That market is separated into 4 districts, each owned by 4 heavyweight mafias. Hell, we have a contract with 2 of those mafias that let us handle some of their sensitive cargo." Plex nudged me smugly before Libitus continued. "All our deliveries are marked with the district, the block, the street, and the building number. Most buildings in the market are given a number. Oh, and a little advice, don't mess around with the unmarked buildings unless you want to get your head taken off. The only reason you go near them is if you have a delivery to one. Those buildings are almost always owned by the mafias. And if they aren't, then they're owned by someone you really don't want to fuck with, because those guys can fuck with the mafias. Anyway." Libitus rolled his eyes at Plex. "Just know what district you're in, keep an eye on the block numbers and streets, and you can find your way. Things are pretty orderly in the black market, contrary to popular belief. Yeah, you don't let savages handle expensive things." Plex chuckled, and after he packed the map, he stuffed it in my arms. "Keep it with you and use it when needed, but do me a favor and don't make yourself look like a tourist. It attracts unwanted attention. And speaking of, you'll need this." Plex reached into his coat and grabbed a sheath. It contained a large knife, one that was worn with usage. A simple knife, but good enough so long as you don't get on the bad side of a magus. Just know that nobody wants to get cut, so as long as you don't push a fight, it probably won't happen, and you can get your way. At the end of the day, all you need is payment. Now." Plex looked up toward the roof, seeing a small window that showed the darkening sky. "We should get going. I like to please our clients with prompt service." He waved me along, leaving Libitus to grab a few packages and do his own work. We made our way to the golden trading post that was already beginning to surge with activity. And when we made it to the restaurant that Chef Black operated, he tossed me a large kebab that held several chunks of savory meat. "Thanks, Chef." "Haha, just watch your back in there." The large man smiled, and we passed through. Our destination was deep inside the black market, specifically one of the four corners that was home to the core of our heavyweight client, the Tavera family. They were identified by their saber crest. Most of the members carried an actual saber with special engravings, making them easy to pick out. At first their territory was crowded with people and business. It seemed nice, like an eternally festive atmosphere of civilized debauchery. But as we got deeper, all that faded rather quickly. Instead, we encountered luxurious buildings and more members who roamed the streets with tasks of their own. Many of the buildings had their interiors completely sealed, but Plex told me that they were home to some of the best products one could buy. Apparently they also manufactured special drugs, but nobody knew where. Along the way, we ended up being stopped a few times, but Plex's identity got us through every time. It seemed delivery men really were special. And soon, we arrived at the home of the Tavera family. A large manor with armored guards out front, including rows of tall torches that illuminated a red pathway to the front door. We walked up, and I stopped with Plex outside the front door. Soon enough, the door opened, and we were greeted by a surprisingly beautiful woman. She smiled at Plex, speaking with a soothing voice. "Plex, we appreciate your timely arrival." "Haha, of course, Parif. Who is your guest?" Parif looked at me curiously. I kept my cool as best I could and simply smiled. Plex talked for me. "This is my apprentice, John. I'm teaching him, so I hope his presence won't be much of a bother." "No, it's not. Come in." She opened the door and ushered us in. I looked around as my feet hit the stone floor. The entire place was lit up with bright yellow floating lights, casting a warm glow on the gold and red interior. Golden pillars had pictures of warriors and battles depicted on them, and the red floor looked like marble that had been dyed red. 2 staircases went from the center of the room and sloped upward, leading into other halls. Parif led us up one of the stairs and through a hall, coming upon a set of mahogany double doors. After knocking twice, she waited about 4 seconds before opening. What was revealed was a study, and a single man who sat behind a massive desk. He lifted his head from the book in front of him, smiling at Plex and giving me a curious glance. "Plex and a guest?" "Yes, Patriarch Tavera. This is my apprentice." "Oh? Thinking of retiring soon?" The man spoke with a sultry voice, and I observed him as Plex smiled as if embarrassed. The man had a very clean mustache that he occasionally twisted the end of. His hair was slicked back, and his suit was kept prim and proper. Patriarch Tavera turned his gaze from Plex to me. "What's your name, boy?" "John, sir." And you're a magus?" Like previously, he managed to guess my little secret without even seeing the crest on my hand. I nodded. "Yes, but I have yet to figure out how to use my power. I plan on enrolling in the magisterium when they open." "Ah, I see. I wish you luck. Let me see your crest." "Okay." Slipping off my glove, the Patriarch saw the 13 stars on the back of my hand. He sighed. "A summoner, HM? In that case, a difficult road lies in front of you." "A summoner?" I couldn't help but question confusedly. The Patriarch nodded his head toward my hand. "Your crest. Those crests with pointed symbols on them, like stars, triangles, anything with edges, are the indicators of a summoner. You're no doubt a summoner. Unfortunately, summoners also have the most difficult time within the magisterium. They are very often outclassed by the warlocks and knights." The man raised his right hand, revealing a crest of abstract lines, as if it had been slashed by a blade many times. "These line crests are the indicators of a knight, which I am. We specialize in bodily enhancement, like speed, strength, endurance, regeneration, and more. My Tavera family is a family of knights, and we often come into conflict with the other mafias because of that. And while we're on the topic of other families, I should brief you on your delivery order." The Patriarch suddenly opened a drawer of his desk, retrieving a small wooden box. He eyed Plex. This box contains a message for our fiery friends at the Clockwork Institution. The Warlock Mafia? He placed the box on the edge of the desk. Take it to them at this arranged meeting spot, and report back here when all is said and done. Understood. We'll be back before morning comes. Good. And take this deposit too. Plex grabbed the box, a small slip of paper, and a bag of coin. With that, he stowed them and bowed. As we turned to leave, he spoke once more. Oh, and John? I turned, seeing the Patriarch's small smile. Come back, and I'll put in a word with the Polaris family. Thank you, Patriarch. Although both good and bad feelings rose up within me, I simply nodded and thanked him. After that, Plex and I left the manor of the Tavera family, taking to the streets. Plex sighed as we walked, causing me to voice my concerns. When he said come back, it means this may not be a smooth delivery. He scratched his head. The Clockwork Institution is at odds with the Tavera family. So whatever this message is, if they don't take it well, they may decide to kill us. Of course, we won't sit back and die so easily, and the Patriarch isn't one to screw me over. That's why there's a meeting spot in neutral territory. Still, I don't know if I can fight a bunch of wizards. I mumbled. Warlocks were all spellcasters. If this went south, I expected fireballs to come my way, and I don't know how prepared I was to face that. Plex smacked my back. Hey, don't worry so much. Remember, warlocks take a few seconds to prepare their spells. If these guys really are going to try anything, we have a window to run away. Just don't remain in an open area with them while at a distance. That just makes you a target. Right. I sighed as we continued to take turns down various streets. And finally, we arrived at an unmarked warehouse. It looked incredibly worn down, with foliage hanging across rusted metal walls and broken down infrastructure. We slipped through a destroyed door that was hanging on its hinges, entering what looked like the ruins of a small factory. There were some large machines that hadn't seen the light of day in years and storage shelves scattered throughout the place. Only in the center was there an open clearing. It was there that we met our wizard friends. 3 of them, all draped in robes, not bothering to hide the symbol of what I assumed was the Clockwork Institution on their chests. Their symbol was that of gears and interconnected circuits, looking like a complex machine. And each of our contacts were carrying themselves with confidence, not likely to be mere goons of the institution. Plex greeted them with friendliness, as was standard in this line of business. Hello, my friends from the Dash. Where's the message? He was interrupted by the warlock in the middle, the one who seemed to be the leader with slightly more luxurious robes than the other 2. Plex continued to smile while retrieving the wooden box. He handed it off to the one on the right, who opened it before handing it to the leader. The leader looked into the box for a long while, his expression not changing in any way. Instead, he slowly brought out what was inside. A finger, with a ring around its severed base. It had long dried, and the sight caused my face to scrunch. Do you know what this is? Sorry, sirs, but we're just the messengers. The details and context of the product delivered are not our concern. They should be. The leader muttered, his tone falling, and his words causing me to go on guard. Even Plex lost a bit of his friendliness as he asked. Sirs, the head of the Tavera family would like a response. Ah, geez. Plex sighed, turning to me with a wry smile. Sorry, kid, maybe I should have left you. Let's do our best, okay? Okay? My heart sunk as I cautiously responded. And before I was able to react, I saw Plex's leg swing out, his foot crashing into my chest with insane force. My body was suspended in the air. As I felt the air rush out of my lungs, I could see a flash of light from the direction of the warlocks. Fireballs, just as I had worried about. They crashed in the place where I was. With Plex's kick I was safe, my body landing in the midst of storage shelves. Plex also disappeared. Adrenaline shot through my body as I heard the explosion. Not long after, I heard Plex's voice echo amongst the ruined factory. "Get going, kid! And don't stop for anything! Ack!" I grunted while struggling to breathe. Still, knowing how dangerous things had turned, I crawled to my feet and headed deeper into the ruins. "Get them! Their corpses will be our response to the piece of shit at Tavera," I heard the leader's voice reverberate. And not long after, I saw a light flash through the shelf I was behind. I threw my body, barely avoiding the explosion that toppled the shelf and sent debris flying behind me. "We got this one, sir." "Fine. I'll get the other slippery bastard." "Shit!" I heard those words while scrambling in another direction, cursing inwardly at my luck. It seemed I would need to run away from two wizards. My lungs were still desperately heaving for air as I ran between all the shelves and machines that served as obstacles. I took my time, and only occasionally did a fireball come hurtling in my direction. Every time it happened I was forced to jump out of the way, and a few times I was still hit by debris, my body becoming a bit battered. It only served to wake me up though. With the help of adrenaline, I felt myself become hyper-aware, every sound and color being used to indicate where the two wizards were. However, I was only able to tell where one of them was, and that's because he was the one launching the fireballs. The second one, though. Walking amidst the storage shelves, there was a long period of silence. I kept my steps as quiet as possible, my breathing light despite how tired I already was. But then, I turned a corner, and I saw a figure. My heart jumped, another surge of adrenaline overcoming me as I saw the robed man wave his hand. Colors bloomed as white lines were drawn in the air before him. His fingers traced the air, creating circuits that traveled between gears which manifested in cyclical formations. It looked like the symbol of the Clockwork Institution. Gears, circuits, symbols, all of them coming together in what I only assumed was a spell. And it only took a few seconds before I saw the air distort. In the corner of my eye as well, I could see another flash of light, the sign of another fireball. My avenues were cut off. One in front, one behind. Those few seconds felt so long, but right as the spell of the warlock in front of me flashed, my shirt was suddenly yanked, my body being pulled to the side. I watched as I was pulled through the brittle metal wall of the warehouse, fragments scraping my clothes and skin. Then I was stopped on the street. I heard Plex's voice. "Start running! That one's an air specialist. Use the buildings to your advantage." "Okay." There were many things I wanted to say, and several questions I wanted to ask. But right now, there was no time to lose. Turning in another direction, I took off into some dark alleyways. At the same time, I could hear explosions not far from me, but ones that sounded different from the fireballs. They were also more rapid. It was the leader, no doubt. Plex couldn't be having an easy time if even he was hurried. Thankfully it seemed he was also a competent magus, so he had some power. Not so fortunate for me though. Sure, I was a magus, but I had no idea how to use my power. I could only run. The two wizards on my tail gave chase. It seemed like they were fast too, because even with my recovering speed, I couldn't seem to shake them off. I took turn after turn, and no matter where I went, my surroundings were nothing but dark buildings and creepy alleyways. The people were scarce too, and when I came running, they often shrunk to the side, especially when they saw my pursuers. No open areas, no distance. I repeated these things in my mind. I couldn't let these guys have enough time to launch a fireball my way, so I needed to constantly be twisting and turning. At the same time, I retrieved the knife Plex gave me. My stamina was draining and I couldn't keep running forever, especially since these guys seemed like they were in better shape than me. They were gaining, so my mind rapidly started forming ideas. End of chapter. Chapter 5, First Star. It was the so-called air specialist who was trying to catch me up close. On the contrary, The fireball one kept his distance intentionally. I could only assume that the air specialist had the ability to fight up close. Still, I was running out of energy, so I needed to do something. And I got an idea. I turned a corner, just as I always did. But then I stopped. I turned and looked back to where I knew the air specialist would come. In fact, I even charged back around, my knife in hand and my desperation ready to kill someone. As if before it was only playing around, my adrenaline surged more than it ever has. It was like a drug, making my senses unbearably acute, and forcing my muscles to use every ounce of power they had. But it seemed like the air specialist was cautious. Instead of turning the corner hastily, he came at an angle, arriving with distance between us. Still I charged. Turning and running away because things didn't go exactly as predicted would only give him the opening he wanted. And my desperation wasn't going to go unsatisfied. My large strides carried my arm to where it needed to go. I threw myself at that robed man with wild abandon. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. And he raised his palm in retaliation. He pushed it toward my chest, but disregarding whatever he was going to do, I pushed forward. And my knife met its target. I stabbed forward, but instead of the knife slicing through the robe, it was actually stopped. However, my surging force behind it couldn't be so easily negated. Although the blade didn't slice through, I could distinctly feel the knife push its fabric-enveloped edge into the man's body. I could feel flesh split, and I could hear the man yell in pain. Fabric might block a slash, but its flexibility still allowed deformation. I was basically stabbing him with a dulled blade, and it had its effects. However, his palm that was slammed against my torso didn't seem to be for nothing. Right after I stabbed, I could feel an odd force surge from his hand with a momentary flash. I could feel the gust of air brush against my body, making my clothes flutter. But that was light. Instead, the force was invisible as it surged through my body. An invisible energy. It felt both weirdly invasive and incredibly painful as it disrupted my insides. It was like a punch to the liver. It made me weak, my stomach contracting and forcing me to vomit. My legs buckled for but a moment as I was thrown to the floor. But as I pulled away, I could see a vague phantom appear beside the air specialist. And then, a knife appeared in his neck. Blood sprayed into the air as his body collapsed, his hands clutching his neck. That phantom moved toward me, grabbing my arm and forcing me up despite every cell in my body protesting. "Don't stop! Not unless you want to burn alive!" Plex's voice shook my head before he shoved me into another alleyway. After that, I could hear more explosions along with the enraged shouts of the leader. Riding the high of my adrenaline, I ignored the pain and ran even without breathing. But now, I really was at my limit. I didn't even have 10 seconds to recover, and minutes of that had pushed my body to its short-term limits. So I found the nearest doorway and threw my body against it. Thankfully, luck was on my side as it was thrown open. I stumbled into a dark room decorated with sparse furniture covered in dust. Abandoned, probably, or just really in need of a cleaning. Either way, nobody seemed to be home, so I ran into the back, entering another door to enter a similarly dark and smaller room. It seemed to be a bedroom, fit with a closet and everything. It was the closet I disappeared into. After that, I could hear hurried footsteps scamper across the wooden floor of the living room. It was the Fireball Warlock, and his breath was hurried as he slowly walked through. He was quiet, as was I. I tried as best I could, but I needed to breathe, so my breath wasn't exactly quiet. But I was still inside the closet, all the sounds I was making muffled. And I knew that guy wasn't one to get close. He had kept his distance the entire time. He probably didn't have a nasty trick like the air specialist. So I was given some time. Time to revel in the agony of my bodily pain. My stomach hurt the most, like all my guts were bruised. And they probably were. That invisible energy wave was a nasty attack. I could taste the iron of blood on my tongue. However, I had noticed something else inside me. More specifically, I noticed a change inside my mind. It was like I had gained a new awareness of something. Something supernatural. Within a dark space inside my head, I could see one bright star and 12 faded stars. A single star of the 13 stars was now present, and as if it were the gateway, I could make out other objects within. The patriarch of the Tavera family said I was a summoner. Well, the powers of a summoner were obvious. They summoned things to do battle for them. And my summons... Tap. I could hear the footsteps of the fireball man make their way into the room I was in. As my breathing was hurried, he probably knew where I was. Sure enough, his steps stopped, and everything was silent. But then, through the gap underneath the door I was behind, I could see a flash. I raised my arms. Boom! A burst of fire crashed into the door, shattering the wood and blowing it down. There was dust and smoke that rose up as the fireball man approached the doorway. He looked inside, his face sure of himself. But then... click! I stood, facing him directly. And my arm was raised, my hand that held the flintlock pistol pointed straight for his face. I smiled through the agony of my body, even as blood spilled from my lips and tongues of fire burned my clothes. I don't think I've ever been so excited as I looked across the barrel of this primitive weapon. Tally-ho, bitch! Bang! The patriarch of the Tavera family looked down at me with a punchable smile. Thankfully they had a healer. It was an older gentleman who was a warlock and trained in the ways of healing, whatever that meant. All I knew was that I felt a lot better after he drugged me with some tasty red pills that melted in my mouth. They were kind of like candies. Plex, on the other hand, was perfectly fine. Figures, since his ability was apparently turning invisible. No wonder he was so good in this line of business. If he were by himself, he could just escape any confrontation. You did good, kid! To think you'd awaken your power right as you were cornered. You know, I think you're just right for this line of business. Isn't that right, patriarch? Indeed. The ability to grow in the face of adversity is the greatest trait one can have. Your wisdom is spot on. What do you think, John? The payout for this job is big, and there will be more in the future. How about you come officially work with me? I was silent as I weakly raised my middle finger. It didn't seem like this insult translated to this world though, as Plex tilted his head. What's that? Something you can shove up your ass. Bahaha! The patriarch suddenly roared in laughter, smacking Plex's back. Plex, you've got a good one here. Take him to the Polaris family after he recovers. He's made it through this trial by fire, so I plan to make true on my promise. Sure thing, patriarch. Plex nodded as the patriarch walked out. The two of us were left alone, me in the medical bed of the Tavera mansion. Plex narrowed his eyes at me. You get 20% of the pay. Deal. 10%, since you easily agreed. What? I jumped, and we argued until I was too tired to negotiate anything better than 17%. After that, I was finally allowed to rest, succumbing to incredible mental exhaustion. I was pretty sure the encounter only lasted an hour or so. After a night's rest at the Tavera mansion, I left the black market and headed back to my small hotel room. Of course, that wasn't without my cut of the pay from the heavyweight job. Just under 20% of the pay gave me about 3,400 coin. It was an enormous amount considering the other small jobs only gave a few hundred coin at most. Of course, this pay was earned at the risk of my life, but if I were Plex with his experience and abilities, I too would be having a heyday with these jobs. Earning huge amounts of money would be child's play. However, after my discovery in the face of death, I was thinking that I really might be able to carve out a spot for myself in this business. While on my bed, still recovering from my internal wounds, I lifted my hand and gazed at my crest. Then I closed my eyes. In the dark space of my mind, I could see one star lighting the space. Around it were 12 other stars, all of them faded, obviously not yet unlocked. I concentrated on the first lit one, and my vision zoomed into the star. It was like the star was a portal to another dimension, one that contained an assortment of weapons and gear. One of them was the flintlock I had used last night. A primitive weapon, but still devastating against fleshy targets with its large lead bullet. It was only capable of one shot before it had to be reloaded, and thankfully, I only needed one shot to kill that fireball warlock. Otherwise I may as well have kissed my life goodbye. The point was though that I had just found out the use of my crest. I was indeed a summoner, but instead of summoning monsters or creatures to fight for me, I summoned guns. I couldn't think of a more American power than this. Conjuring the power of beautiful steel firearms to deliver hell upon my enemies. Or just to keep myself from getting robbed in the black market. Either way. In the first star, I could see primitive weapons like the flintlock, tomahawk, some knives, etc. And there were 12 more stars ahead, all of them faded, my mind unable to look into their dimensions. But I could guess what would lie ahead. Better weapons, better gear. With each star I would no doubt unlock better weaponry, though I didn't know just how good it would get. As for summoning those weapons, it wasn't as simple as pulling the weapon out of the dimension. In some way, the weapons were still mystical since the flintlock I pulled out was no longer with me. It had disappeared at some point not long after I used it. And now when I looked into the star with a bit of a clearer head than before, I could tell that there was a price on these weapons. A price that was paid with the invisible energy inside me. I was certain that the invisible wave of energy I was hit with last night had triggered something within me since now. I was also aware of a mystical energy inside my body. It was a simple ball of energy, located at the center of the 13 stars. It was small, lacking density like a faint fog. It was also red in color. This red ball of energy was faintly connected to the star. I knew that I could stream its energy into it, and with it, summon one of the weapons. Unfortunately, my energy wasn't great and the prices for these weapons seemed significant. Honestly, I wasn't sure how I had summoned the flintlock pistol. But I knew that there were many things that I didn't know about this magical system, so I decided to wait until I could learn more. Until then. Knock knock. Suddenly, I could hear taps on my door. They were gentle, but given the recent events, I still cautiously opened the door with my hand on the knife sheath. And the person I saw was familiar. Chief! Haha, it's good to see you, John. The chief smiled. I was very fond of this man from a rural village. Out of the kindness of his heart, he brought me to this city and set me up. Without him, I don't know what I would have done when I first came here. However, I had thought he left, which was why I was surprised he was here. Also, he shouldn't know where I was living as I had rented a room in a hotel Plex recommended. The chief was all smiles as we clasped hands, but then he checked out my body. Along my face and my exposed arms were several large cuts and bruises that were healing. Goodness, John, what happened? Who hurt you? Nobody important, Chief. The situation was handled rather well if I do say so myself. If you say so. The chief looked worried, but with my confidence, he didn't press the matter. I tilted my head at him. Didn't you leave? It's been a few days. You should be heading back to the village. I was going to, but I wanted to check on you before I left, make sure you were settling nicely. And since I didn't find you at my hotel, I searched around and found your name here. Sorry if I was intrusive. No, it's fine. I'm actually glad I got to see you one more time. Here, come in and let me give you something. I waved him in and walked over to a nearby table, pulling out my large sack of coin. As I sifted through, I asked a question. Hey Chief, how much coin does the normal man make in a month? A month? Well, the men at the town make around 1,000 a month with farming, but for those in the city, Maybe 5,000? I couldn't be sure. Oh. I was surprised. To think I got around a month's pay from a single night of work, and that was just a fraction of the entire payout. Being a delivery man paid shockingly well. Not long after, I pulled out a small stack of coin. Here's some money as a thank you for taking care of me. I pushed 1,000 coin toward the chief, and he seemed flustered by the money. 1,000 coin? John, where did you get so much in a few short days? It was an advance for my new job. Take it for your help. I won't take no for an answer. I slid the coin to him with seriousness that didn't let him deny. It only ended when he reluctantly took the money, giving me a heavy sigh. John, you're a good kid. Just know you can come by my village at any time. Yummer Village. You'll always have a home there. Thanks, Chief. Just make sure you get back safely. End of chapter. Chapter 6 Solo. I had many questions about my new power of summoning. I wanted to know what that energy was, how I could increase it, how to unlock more stars, and how to properly summon weapons. Thankfully, it seemed like the time to learn these things wasn't far off. Although the patriarch of the Tavera family had promised me, I had no idea who the Polaris family was or what they could give me. It was only when I arrived at the warehouse that Plex explained. Oh yeah, they're a summoner mafia, but not headquartered in the Founders Market. They're located in the second black market called the Black Spider Market. In that place, there are only two mafias that dominate, and one of them is the Polaris family. Plex rubbed his chin while looking across the job board, plucking a few papers. The Polaris family, while primarily filled with summoners, also has divisions of warlocks and knights. They're a powerful family even greater than the Tavera family in regards to the sheer power of their members. The Tavera family has more influence though and handles more money. This difference between them has led to them being allies. What's the difference between the Founders Market and the Black Spider Market? I guess it's the difference between the elites and the commoners. Plex walked over, laying out a few jobs on the table. The Black Spider Market, while handling less monetary volume, also handles the most valuable items. Information, high-class mercenaries, and some of the most exotic items you've ever seen. They're the top dogs of the black market within this kingdom, and you, my friend, have scored an opportunity to meet with them. Specifically, a powerful summoner who's going to give you some advice. This opportunity is a huge one, so huge that I'm shocked you actually got it. Oh, that sounds useful. I brightened at his words. I was just thinking how I needed more information about my power. Now, I was going to meet an expert in the field. Truly a God-sent opportunity. And all it took was almost dying in a fiery hell. Plex shook his head. You're lucky, John. I know I roped you into this dangerous job considering you're new to the city and all, but there are many who would kill to be in your position. Of course, there have been many who've died in your position as well. I think the Patriarch knew that, so he's giving you a bit of support. What you gain in your meeting today will likely determine how you fare over the next several months. Because, well, you're kind of locked into this now. It's do or die. Wait, the meeting's today? His ominous words blew right over my head as I selectively asked that question. He nodded. It is. But first. He picked out two of the jobs he had in front of him, shoving them in my face. Go make a couple deliveries. Once you get back, we'll leave. Consider yourself initiated, kid. Now you get to deal with a bunch of addicts and unsavory underground dealers. I sighed while taking the papers. From the first day, I had pretty much accepted what I'd gotten into. Of course, if Plex wasn't the way he was, then I would have left quickly. But Plex seemed a good man, someone who had saved my life a few times already. So long as I wasn't a dumbass, it seemed he would lead me to succeed. I didn't mind working in this shady business, especially considering it paid so well. Plus, it had already taught me a lot about this world, and it would continue to teach me more as I got better. I was jumping into the deep end of what this new life had to offer. But hey, I'd rather do this than be a baker at a bread shop or sitting at the front desk of some random store. With those convictions, I made my way out of the warehouse, embarking on my first solo jobs. My 2 deliveries were rather easy. The hardest part was navigation. I had to admit, it was embarrassing looking like a tourist with a map, so much of my time was spent wondering if I was going in the right general direction, only taking out my map a few times. But finally getting to the locations, I was able to pick up the items to be delivered from the dealers. After that, I took them to the recipients. Thankfully, the first one didn't show me any hostility. He seemed busy and gave me the money straight, so I simply took it back to the dealer. It was the second recipient, though, that gave me a hard time. But that's when my acting skills, what little I had, came into play. I mimicked Plex as best I could, keeping a confident and uncaring attitude, as if I wasn't afraid of a fight. Of course I was, but they didn't need to know that. That combined with a friendly demand and a small brandish of my obviously used knife, and the guy's attitude flipped as he brought me the money. And after taking that to the last dealer, my jobs were done. It took almost 3 hours for just 2 jobs, which honestly wasn't that bad. The 2 jobs combined paid me 400 coin, which, while nothing compared to the heavyweight delivery, was still really good pay. After all, monthly salaries on the low end were around 2,000 coin. I was already a fifth of the way there with 3 hours of work. Of course, things were more expensive in the city. I was still living in a hotel, had only 1 pair of normal clothing, and walked around with nothing to my name. Once I actually started buying things, I'm sure the expenses would add up. After all, everything was always more expensive in the cities. I'm sure normal monthly salaries here ranged around 5,000 coin, like what the chief told me. In that case, I had a lot more work to do. But first, I was going to learn about my power from a proper summoner. I was excited as I walked down the streets of the Founders Market. All the sights of risque women and colorful gambling dens were still exciting to me, even though I knew I would get used to it eventually. However, it was when I was approaching the exit that I heard my name. John! My head turned, finding Libitus and another man waving toward me. They were behind a bar with a few drinks in front of them. I walked over. Hey, Libitus. John! I heard you took a hard hit during the heavyweight run yesterday. It also looks like you healed nicely. Yeah, thankfully. Whatever the doctor at the mansion gave me was good stuff. Although I'm sore, I don't have any problems working. Good. He nodded. Then, the man next to him smiled. Hey, he really does look like a tourist. Well, right now, I know the black market better than the actual city. So forgive me. What's your name? With a smile, I put my hand out toward the stranger. He looked at me silently for a second before grabbing an unopened glass and slapping it into my hand. Tovex. I heard you're Plex's new protege. Not necessarily by choice, but yes. Heh, since when does anyone here have a choice? He chuckled before taking a swig. Libitus chimed in. You may not have asked for any of this, but it's not a bad line of business. The danger is the worst part. Everything else is easy. I'd actually say you're lucky. You being completely new to the city, a foreigner through and through, is what landed you this job. Why would that get me this job? Because you can never be too sure about someone. The mafias and the clans of the kingdom go to extreme lengths to plant spies and saboteurs in all industries. It's damn near impossible to find someone who has no biases toward any one banner. Neutrality in this place doesn't exist. Except for our business. Libitus sighed, but his words made me confused. You're saying that Plex has no biases? Not even toward the Tavera family who's his client? No, actually. Plex doesn't limit himself. He'll work for enemies if they hand over the money. People like the patriarch of the Tavera family are just those he's friends with. But when it comes to business, there are no loyalties in his eyes. And that's exactly what makes him so famous. That and his abilities. The man has never failed a job. No assassins nor the royal guard can stop him. And I'm supposed to be his protégé. I suddenly had great doubts as to my position in all this. It seemed like Plex was a renowned man not just in his field of business, but in the entire kingdom. How was I supposed to be that man's apprentice? More than that, how could he possibly declare me so when I haven't shown any ability to handle what he does? Libitus sighed. Well, don't be shocked, but you're not actually the first. Plex has brought in and tutored around a dozen different kids just like you. Most of them died when he dragged them into the lion's den like he did with you. Luckily you survived. And what about the others who also survived like me? Well, he scratched his cheek. One died during a direct conflict with the Clockwork Institution, and the other got greedy for a delivery and was hunted. That second one ended up becoming a delivery that Plex took, his head being dropped off in a box at the warehouse. And the intended recipient was the kid's mother. So basically, all of them have died. Ouch. I rubbed my temples with a long breath. Tovex suddenly slapped my shoulder. Hey, all you have to do is not do what they did. Don't die, and don't get greedy. Those are basically the only tenets of us delivery men. Those who follow those rules get the money, the fun, and the connections. Those who don't end up with their heads in boxes. So just be smart about things, yeah? I'll do my best. I smirked while twisting off the cap of my bottle, taking a swig. And it was surprisingly good alcohol. I nodded at it before waving to the two. All right, I've got a place to be. The Polaris family, right? Hey, take all you can get from there. If you get lucky, you'll be doing business with them too. Remember, connections are everything. I thought that was common knowledge. I asked with a smile while walking away, leaving the black market. After passing through and grabbing a kebab from Chef Black's restaurant, I made my way back to the warehouse. There, Plex was sprawled out on a chair, snoring while asleep. Seriously? It's not even midnight yet. I walked over, kicking his leg. Hey. Huh. We've got places to be. And I was only gone for a few hours. He yawned and spent a few seconds waking up. Then he sniffed, and his eyes turned toward my bottle. I narrowed my eyes, suddenly knocking it all back and downing what was left. Damn you! Hey, this is good stuff. Speaking of, I ran into Libitus and Tovex, and they told me about all your prior apprentices. Oh? He sobered up a bit, leaning back into the seat. It's true. A lot of young'uns have gotten killed attempting to survive in this line of work. Why does that scare you? It doesn't make me happy. To think that if I hadn't discovered how to use my power, I would have died from a fireball. Sure, you saved me once, but you still put me into that position. So I can't say that my trust in your integrity hasn't warped significantly. But, well, I suppose I have my own assurances now. Got one taste of power and decided that you're invincible. I happen to have an apprentice like that. He's dead now. As if that fact were something to be proud of, Plex only smirked at me. And I could understand. I barely knew anything about these crests, or the magic of this world. I was hardly a newborn baby in the field, and I was already confident in myself. That would be a bad thing, but only if I were anything but a summoner. Guns happened to be a great equalizer. Unless Plex had some strong magical armor underneath his clothes, or if his magic was as strong as steel, a single bullet from even a flintlock could kill him, let alone the weapons in my other stars. I mean, I killed that fire warlock with a single bullet. And he had far more experience than I did. Guns were great. But that was difficult to explain to Plex, so I didn't press the issue, just shaking my head at him. All I want from you is to not be thrown into certain death. I can be an apprentice or whatever the hell you've roped me into being. I want the money and experience. But don't go thinking you can throw my life away like all the other apprentices you've apparently had. Do that, and I might just take you out with me. Is that a threat? Plex stood from his seat, standing in front of me with a casual gaze of grizzled hostility. But I only tensed up, meeting him head-on. Yeah, that was a threat. So if you leave me to die in a clusterfuck of wizards and fireballs, you better make sure I'm dead by the end of it. Otherwise I'm coming after you with some cold steel in my hand. After a moment of tense silence, Plex smiled and chuckled. Haha, you're a feisty one. Don't worry, John. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't be taking you to a place that'll make you stronger. So how about we quit the pissing contest and go take a trip, He smacked my shoulder and started walking out of the warehouse. Relaxing my body, I sighed and left with him, taking to the city streets. End of chapter. Chapter 7, Maxwell. The Founders Market was located in the outer regions of the city. This meant that its area wasn't high class despite being wealthy. The Black Spider Market, on the other hand, I didn't think it was in the heart of the city. Even more that it would be clearly marked for the public to see. Besides the monolithic Magic Tower and the Royal Palace, there were several other skyscrapers around them, though they weren't as tall. I roughly counted 8 other skyscrapers that could compare in height. And one of those was the Black Spider Hotel. Many might see it and think it a mere luxurious hotel, a place for other diplomats or politicians to stay temporarily. But apparently it was a front for a much deeper reality. Plex led me into the hotel, and it was there that we met the receptionist. He was a man of average height and build, not looking special in any way besides his prim appearance and demeanor. But of course, no assumptions could be made about anybody associated with this place. Ah, Plex. It's good to see you again. Making another delivery? Not quite, Keymaster. I'm actually here for my protege John right here. He patted my shoulder, prompting the Keymaster to nod toward me. John, is it? I wish you luck during your session with the Polaris family. He smiled toward me as Plex put 2 coins on the table. Taking them, the Keymaster waved his hand. An owl was momentarily summoned on his shoulder. That big-eyed bird looked at me before looking down at the coins. Its eyes flashed, and then the Keymaster placed the coins back on the table. Plex took one, and I took the other. The owl disappeared as I took the coin. Welcome to the Black Spider Hotel. You have been granted entry. Here are the keys. He brought out 2 keys from seemingly nowhere, handing them to us. I felt its weighty significance and copper-like texture that was refined with masterful craftsmanship, giving it intricate yet sleek designs. After that, Plex said his goodbyes, as did I. We left for what seemed like an elevator. In fact, the entire first floor of the hotel was filled with elevators. At least a dozen of them filled the walls, and we quickly chose one before stepping inside. Go ahead and insert your key. Plex said that as he did so. I could see 10 keyholes on one of the walls, so I picked one at random and stuck my key inside. Turn to the right. Click. I listened to him and heard a noise. After that, a screen flashed above the keyholes. It showed 2 buttons. One had the number 3 on it, and the other was blank. Remember this for the future. Plex spoke while pulling out his coin, looking at its surface. Every day, the floor to access the Black Spider Market is different. The correct floor is indicated by your coin, so if you're going for the market, enter the number on the coin. On the other hand, if you're here for the hotel, click the button with the number 3 on it. Okay. I pulled out my coin like he did and saw a number on it. Then I tapped the blank button, causing a dial of numbers to appear around it. I typed in 82 foot. Ding! With my input, the elevator made another noise as it began to move. Good. Just remember, only one person needs the coin, but both people need the key. That means you always go to the Keymaster first. Hence his name. Alright. Oh, and don't mess with the guy either. He may not look it, but he's the emissary for the entire black spider market. Let's just say, if you happen to see him outside of that reception desk, something somewhere is seriously fucked up. Right. I just let out a sharp sigh. Seriously, you couldn't judge anyone by appearance here. It wasn't long before the elevator brought us to our destination. When it opened, I could see a luxurious hallway with a red carpet, chandeliers along the ceiling, and large paintings of what seemed like notable figures, both men and women. There were 2 people standing guard at the end of the hallway, both standing to the side of a set of double doors. They were wearing full plate armor seemingly made of silver, their faces covered by intimidating but intricately designed helmets. We walked up to them, Plex taking out his coin while doing so. I also did, and upon seeing both, they pushed open the doors for us. And then, we were allowed into the black spider market. Oh, I forgot this was today. What a coincidence. Plex let out a happy chuckle as we descended a small set of stairs, walking into a huge plaza. It was full of floating lights and colorful sprites that looked like fairies. There were men and women dancing within this plaza to the melodic beat of an orchestra playing within an open building. Their music, both upbeat yet complex in its musical design, had everyone laughing, smiling, and clacking the heels of their shoes to its rhythm. The atmosphere was intoxicating. I felt like jumping right in, joining all those strangers with passion and freeing enthusiasm. I could also smell the high-class alcohol, rich in flavor yet carrying an aroma of powerful ethanol. Plus, everyone was dressed so nicely, like it was some kind of public ball. They were also wearing masquerade masks that covered the top half of their faces, all of them designed with flamboyant feathers or designs. I felt out of place in that way. Even though I was in a suit, it seemed casual compared to the luxurious dresses and tuxedos of everyone else. I also didn't have a mask. This is Vatsy's gala. It happens at the end of every 3rd month, put on and paid for by one of the richest men in the damn world, Harold Vatsy. I'm surprised the Polaris family is having you come to them today. That or Patriarch Tavera is fucking with us. Seriously? He has a sense of humor, so it wouldn't be the first time. Let's just head over. Maybe whoever is supposed to meet you isn't drunk yet. Plex lead me through the plaza. We passed through wide open streets, most of which were filled with people who were passing through to other buildings nearby. Most buildings here were the highest class. Their entries were exotic, carrying flashing designs not unlike neon lights and statues or art. I saw some food establishments, but the majority of buildings were occupied by some sort of craftsman. There was even a library, which turned out to be one of the biggest buildings within the market. The only building bigger than that was the auction house. Plex explained to me that there was no safer place to be than within the auction house during the monthly auctions. And Vatsy's gala was the party that came after the tri-monthly auction, which was the one that sold the most powerful and exotic items. The gala served as a major resting point, almost like a holiday, allowing everyone to get some much-needed entertainment. Of course, only those who could actually enter the black spider market could participate. So the final day of every quarter year was full of chaos, money, and fun. It wasn't uncommon for hundreds of millions of coin to be passed around in that 24-hour period. After all, the things that were sold during the auction were nothing but the best. A small selection of exotic, world-shattering, or insanely luxurious items that caught the eyes of the elites. Of course, there were also numerous sets of things like gear or mass amounts of items that, while not incredibly rare or unique, were still valuable and hard to find. Many illegal items could be attained this way, and nothing lowly like the drugs passed through the Founders Market. It was a place I definitely wanted to know about, as apparently our delivery service was also responsible for moving some things for that auction. It was kind of amazing, the privileges afforded to us mere delivery men. The Black Spider Market wasn't huge, nothing compared to the Founders Market. After all, It was located in the city center behind the Black Spider Hotel. Besides the library and auction house, there were only a few dozen other buildings, along with the massive plaza currently hosting the gala. So it didn't take long to walk to the headquarters of the Polaris family. It was called the Polaris Gate, the entrance that led into the family's estate. And at first glance, the place seemed like a compact college campus. But it was almost entirely empty. Lights were on, but there wasn't a soul in sight besides the guards at the gate. This was obviously due to the party. I was sure everyone was partaking in their night of unhinged entertainment. We approached the guards. "State your business." "We hail from the Tavera family on business." "I am Plex, and this is John." "Ah, I understand. Please follow me." One of the guards seemed to be expecting us, as he led the way into the estate. He walked us along beautifully paved roads and magical lights. With nobody around, the atmosphere was full of mysticism and serenity. Eventually we entered a large building. Within its halls were pairs of large double doors, each of them adorned with unique designs that seemed to represent the demeanor of their owners. The one we stopped at was a pair of doors that seemed luxuriantly decorated, yet weathered by time. It was a deep navy blue with inlaid gems that glistened like stars, but it clearly hadn't been taken care of for a while. "Knock, knock." The guard knocked. "Esteemed Summoner Anderson, John has arrived. Just send him in already." There was an exasperated shout from within the room, yet muffled by the doors. The guard turned to me. "The esteemed sir is named Maxwell Alberain, and he has quite the temperament. Do be sure to muster your patience, because he has no qualms with kicking you from the estate if he gets angry. He is still one of our most esteemed teachers, however, so take full advantage of this opportunity." "Right. Thanks." I gave the guard a nod as he pushed open the door. Plex smacked my shoulder as he turned. "Have fun." I hummed while going inside, scanning the room as I did so. At first glance, it seemed like a magical lab. My nose was hit with the thick aroma of what I could only describe as herbal must. But at the same time, there was a fresh hint of alcohol. All around the room were desks, bookshelves, and various pieces of lab equipment like glass flasks, exotic plants, and animal parts stored in containers. The most eye-catching thing in the room, though, floated below the ceiling in the center of the room. It was a huge blue crystal dodecahedron that slowly rotated while shining soft light on the lab. Just the sight of that magical geometric figure spurred something within me. Other than that, the second thing I focused on was the man who slumped down in a chair, a large bottle in his hands that was still completely filled. It was still capped as he held it in his hands. His visage was gray, and he seemed to be brooding over something. Unlike everyone else, he didn't seem to be enjoying this holiday evening. He had a short beard and brushed back hair that was unkempt. He also wore navy blue robes above a nice suit. At the same time, his eyes were deep as they reflected the sight of the unopened bottle. For a while I stood by the door, unsure of what to do. It didn't seem like this man was in any mood to teach me anything. He just continued to stare at the bottle. Perhaps 5 minutes passed like that. Eventually, he closed his eyes and placed the bottle in a drawer of his desk. After slouching back once more while pinching the bridge of his nose, he muttered, "What do you know?" "Absolutely nothing." I didn't sugarcoat things as I answered directly. It seemed to catch him off guard, since he glanced at me with slight incredulity. His eyes looked me over with criticism. "You come straight off the farm or something?" "No." "Then straighten your damn back." "Oh." Realizing that I was slouched a bit from waiting around for so long, my abdomen tightened and my torso straightened. But even then, he didn't take his scrutinizing eyes off of me. He stared at me for several moments before opening his mouth. "What's your name?" "John Cooper." I gave my name, but I was also confused as to why he didn't already know it. Then again, neither of us had more than 1 day's notice about this. "Where do you come from?" I hesitated. After all, I didn't exactly know about any places of significance beyond this city, and I wasn't about to speak about something as outlandish as coming from another world. So I gave the name of the only place I knew the name of. A place called Ymir Village. So you did come straight off the farm? Well, yes and no. I remained vague as he pried further. How old are you? 22 years old. You were sent to me at the request of Patriarch Tavera. What is your affiliation with him? I'm a delivery man, and I helped him with a single job. It almost cost me my life, but since I came back, he said I would get some tutelage. I see. He let out a small sigh before scratching his head. You're a summoner? Have you gone through an activation ceremony? What's that? You really do know nothing. An activation ceremony is the first step all with crests take to properly initiate their powers. Some say that it's a process of enlightenment, or a way to wake up your soul, but really, it's nothing more than infusing your crests with power in order to make your mind aware of it. Oh. No, I haven't been through the ceremony. Figures. But I have become aware of my crest. I've even used its power. His eyes sparked with the slightest hint of interest. Tell me the details. Basically, I was hit with a wave of invisible energy by a warlock, and afterward, I could see the 13 stars of my crest within my mind. I was even able to summon something, but it disappeared not long after I used it. Energy. You mean mana? You're telling me that being hit with a low-level mana wave actually activated your authority? I suppose? Through inference I could tell that the wave of invisible energy I was hit with was called a mana wave. I asked about what I didn't understand though. What's authority? An authority is what we call the levels of power one can achieve through crests. To be able to summon something means you have activated your first authority. And to think it happened by being hit with a mana wave. I see. What about mana? What is it? The invisible energy ever present throughout the world that allows one to call upon nature's elements. However, only warlocks can utilize mana. Summoners use what's called psyche, the extra-dimensional power of the mind. Knights use vigor, the profound power of the body. Oh. It seemed the 3 different types of magi also had 3 different types of energy. In that case, they were very clearly divided by more than just their powers. So basically, I had awakened my first authority, or my first star, allowing me to summon items from another dimension using psyche. That was where my knowledge stopped. It seemed Maxwell had also summarized the shallow depths of my knowledge, as he went quiet once more. And I suppose I wished he stayed that way. The next words to come out of his mouth were nothing but irritating. You're ignorant. I guess? An idiot who knows nothing. Not even common knowledge seems to have a place within that thick skull of yours. It's like you've spent your life intentionally being a dumbass, taking 0 impressions from anybody who has ever spoken of magi within your presence. My gaze turned deadpan as he continued to insult me for something that wasn't my fault. While I understood his words from the standpoint of a native, I was still ticked off. Just as I was about to retort though, he stood from his seat, disappearing amidst a few of his bookshelves. After listening to the shuffling of paper and a few dropped books, he came back with 6 books with papers sticking out of them. There are 2 things you must learn as a summoner. First is what we call accumulation. I won't teach you any of that right now since you don't need it yet. So I will teach you the second thing. Since you are someone with absolutely no impression of summoning in the slightest, having come from some backwater village and having yet to even get your citizenship, I will teach you this. Thud. He dropped the books on his desk. Now, while I was still irked by all his prior insults, I was beginning to understand that he would at least give me some valuable knowledge. Accumulation is standard. There is very little deviation from the normal formula, and the magisterium holds a legal monopoly on the distribution of the technique. But summoner calls, like warlock magic and knight martial arts, are diverse and plentiful. The Polaris family has their own sets of martial arts, magic, and calls. However, what I will be teaching you deviates from the standard. Picking up the topmost book of the pile, Maxwell flipped it open, his eyes scanning across the pages with a look of melancholy. Summoning is looked down upon, scorned as weak, the calls likened to nothing but a cane for the frail. And there have been some who have proven the world wrong, but they have been outshined by the multitude of warlocks and knights who have so frequently attained vast power. And summoners are not innocent, failing to better themselves like the warlocks and knights, failing to rise through adversity like they have, failing to innovate as they did over millennia. Which is why I have devoted my life to this work. A call to join the League of Disaster Magic and Apex Martial Arts. A call that makes bond limits obsolete. A call to bring down even the most powerful beings. It is the call of the fallen angel. End of chapter. If you enjoy the story, please leave a like and comment to let me know you want more. Make sure to support the author by liking the official story page on Royal Road, link in the description. Patreon can also be found in the description.